Hello everyone, I'm Sightless Combat and welcome to the 2000 subscriber special. I can't quite believe I'm saying that. Yes, over the past 7 years, over 2,000 people have subscribed to the channel, watching my videos, putting comments in, feeding back, giving me motivation to keep carrying on, giving me ideas. All of that is so appreciated. Thank you, all of you, so much. Even starting out from, Mortal Kombat X and Killer Instinct, I can't believe that I'm here now doing this, making even more content and having people be interested in watching it. So here's to another several thousand subscribers and hopefully, you never know, a play button in the future. But, how does this all work? That's why I'm making this video, because for a long time I've used different software, different hardware, all sorts of things, streaming platforms with different feature sets. But I've come to the point where I've realized that, being a Windows user, there wasn't much in the way of accessible video editing after Movie Maker got deprecated several years ago now. And, that's a shame. But what did I do? I switched to a Mac Mini specifically, and started using Final Cut Pro earlier this year. If you've seen the recent God of War edits, for example, those were all created in Final Cut Pro with very little sighted assistance other than a visual check just to see if everything looked okay. And it's been a great idea, but I found there wasn't much in the way of information in terms of how this all worked. As a person with no sight whatsoever, using just the keyboard, because a lot of the instructions are drag X, Y, Z to this place on the screen. So I thought, why not? Given I have the ability to do this, and people have been asking me about it since I mentioned I used Final Cut Pro, why not make a quick little tutorial crash course video to show how it all works? So with that being said, let's dive in. So we are now in Final Cut Pro itself, and I'm in a project with the timeline in focus and the play button under my voiceover cursor. If I VO and left arrow.
Media browser palette, project timeline. In project timeline, layout.
There we go. I had to control option shift down arrows to get into the timeline.
00:00:00:00. Playhead value indicator.
But the playhead is now under my cursor. So what we're going to do, the first step of putting projects together, well, content together, is creating a new project. So to do that, you would press Command N for November.
Project name label. In event, default event label. Starting time code. Video.
And that gives you a lot of information. But the key thing you want to know is that under the cursor is the words
Untitled project.
Or other words, Untitled project. So you would change that according to what you wanted to call it. So we could call it, Final Cut Pro Test. We're not going to, because we already have a project called that, or roughly that, which we're going to use for this video. But if you pressed enter, it would put you into a new window. Actually, I can demonstrate that.
Project timeline layout area. You are
and it doesn't announce, that it's done it, but we can undo the project itself. So if we want to undo creating a new project, we can just press Command Z or Z.
Undo new project.
There we go. Command Z
Final
gives
Cut
you
Pro
that.
has new window.
And Final Cut Pro has new window. That basically means the the title of the window has changed, or other elements have made the window change. So after you've created a new project, what do? You import media with the shortcut Command I.
Media sidebar table. Desktop. F import sidebar desktop image.
And now we're in the import dialog. So what you want to do is you want to press VO end.
Import default button.
That is your import button. You don't need to worry about that just yet, or at all, arguably. If we VO left arrow.
Stop import. Dim button.
We'll find a button that does that if you ever need it.
Close window after import. Ticked checkbox.
That little tick box, which I've left, in that state, so that whenever I've imported stuff, the window just goes away.
Event name.
Partly so I know it's done as well. If we keep scrolling left.
Create clip 52 items. Organizer list split view split group.
We'll find the organizer list, which is a key part of how this works. So we control option shift down arrow.
In organizer list split view.
To go into there. And we press VO end.
Organizer film list outline view table.
And then we do the same thing again.
In organizer film list outline view table.
To get into the table. So control option shift down arrow. Now what you would do here is you would find your video file.
Video trim to G underscore TLOU1 cinematic. The H video outro H short laugh 2 AIFGOW epilogue sync TLOU1 access T AI last of us 1 PS5 conversions collab.
So in folders like that.
Sync demo intro raw MP4.
Or in ideas like that in files there. You would find those and just press enter on those. We're not going to do that because if you try and import media that has already been imported, it doesn't really do anything. It doesn't, update it so it's closer to the beginning of the events view. But I'm getting ahead of myself because we'll cover the events view in a second.
Out of organizer.
So we're going to go out of that with control option shift up arrow twice. And
import.
We can go
close window, scroll area, close window after import.
Actually, we can press escape from here. But the point is you can navigate in and out of that view and it won't cause you a problem. So if we press escape, because we're going to find our media in the events view in a second.
Media.
But normally you would just press enter on
Final
the
Cut Pro has
import
new-
dialog, and it would just import your media into where we're about to be, which is
Events group.
the
Live.
events view, which you can get to with Command 1 when you're in the main window. Now, this does have a few quirks.
100 events group.
So if we press Control Option Shift down arrows to go into it,
Sitcom After 06 group.
that's put me at the end of it. In this instance, if we press VO Home,
Projects. Collapsed. Disclosure.
we have our project view. So if you're doing multiple things at once, you can open different projects and find those, which we're not going to need to do, but you can do that should you want to. But let's find a video file that we can work with.
The 13th of September. Underscore converted TLU1 manual targeting demo survivor. All the shots. Compound clip group. Underscore converted TLU1 manual targeting demo survivor group.
Voiceover spoiling things there slightly with one of the things we're going to cover later. So we have our clip that is
All the shots. Compound
Oh,
underscore
hold on.
converted TLU1. All the shots. Compound clip group. Underscore converted
we
TLU1
go.
manual targeting demo survivor group.
yeah. So we have our manual targeting demo, which has been imported from the import media dialog. So we're going to press. What if we want to see what this is and if it's the right thing? We're going to press slash while we're on this, just the slash key on its own.
Play selection.
Press any button. The Last of Us. Play the
And
main
that is
left
the right
behind.
clip.
The
So we're going
Last
to
of
press
Continue.
E
New
to
code gate. Chapter
append to
encounters. Quarantine
storyline.
zone. The
Append to storyline. The video properties of this clip are not standard. To set project properties based on this clip, choose.
Now, this does happen occasionally. In this instance, we are fine. We can press OK. But if you wanted to follow the instructions in this dialog to then set everything up the way you would want it, you can do that as well.
OK.
But
Default.
let's just click OK on this with VO end and then Control
Events
Option
group.
Space.
Close.
Now we're going
Final
to
Cut Pro.
close. Make sure the events group's closed with Control Option Shift up arrow. That noise means it is closed. And we can hit Command 2 to go into the timeline.
Project timeline. Layout area. Timeline.
There we go. Now, if you were working on a project that required, audio and video to be synced up, say if the encoding had gone a little odd and the audio was introducing artifacts, you can do that as well. I could cover that in a separate video if that's of interest, but essentially you would load the two clips up and paste those as a connected clip and then mute one half of it. The video half specifically where the audio was odd. If you want a long form version of that and how that works, then I'm happy to do that. But that is a more advanced topic, arguably, because really you shouldn't have to deal with that. But that is perfectly doable without sight. What is also perfectly doable is the editing phase, which we're going to come into now. So if we press Control Option Shift down arrow,
In project timeline. Layout area.
and we are now in the timeline, and we can see the playhead at the beginning.
00:02:17:36. Playhead value in.
Well, I say at the beginning. It is at the beginning of the timeline view, but it is not at the beginning of the project. To get it to the beginning of the project, we want to press Home,
Beginning.
and we are now on Home. So there are three keys that are very useful in this view. K, which is pause, and L and J, which are fast forward and rewind respectively. So what we want to do, the first thing we want to do is we can actually add a cross dissolve to the beginning of the clip. Before we start editing, it's always a good idea to know that your clips are going to fade out nicely at the beginning and the end. So we want to press Command T,
Add cross dissolve.
and it will add it at the beginning and the end. So cross dissolve is basically a fade transition of sorts. But the key thing as a content creator without sight is that you will have a fade at the beginning and the end of the clip, which we will see in a minute once we've done the main bulk of the trimming work. So to trim things, you, again,
Beginning.
make sure your playhead is set to the beginning of the project with Home, and we want to press L to scroll forward at normal speed, first of all.
Press any button. The Last of Us.
But then
Play the
we
main
wanna
left
increase the
behind.
speed so we
Last
can
of
press L
Continue.
again.
New code gate. Encounter the quarantine zone. The outskirts.
And again. And again, and again. And we can press K to pause, and L again, and it will resume at normal speed. Now, we are actually at roughly the right place we want to be at because we've skipped over all the stuff that we don't need. But if we want to rewind slightly, we press J, and then we pause, and L and pause to sort of line things up the way you want it to be. Now, how do you get rid of that content? You want to use the blade command, which is Command B.
Blade.
And you'll hear voiceover say blade. So how do we get rid of the bladed content? Because it still looks like it's on the timeline if I were to rewind. Yeah, you can still hear the audio. What we do is we press C when we're over that portion of the clip. So if you always blade, rewind, or fast forward as needed, depending on whether your clip is before or after where you currently are in the timeline, you press C to select the clip.
Select clip.
Then you press backspace to delete or reject. Sometimes it will say either one.
Delete.
There we go. It said delete there, but sometimes it will say reject. So now if we go home
Beginning.
like that. So if we now press L to go forward, we will hear that the audio fades in on its own because that cross dissolve is still there. But say we wanted to get rid of it.
00:00:01:02. Play ahead. Value indicator.
Hang on. If
00:00:00:00:00.
we navigate with VO left and right arrows, well, not left and right together, but left
00:00:00
or right,
00:00:00:00:00. Transition.
we can actually just hit delete on the transition, backspace rather,
Delete.
to get rid of it.
Beginning.
And now that gunshot just happens automatically without a fade. It happens cleanly. So if we want to put that transition back in, we can just undo with Command Z.
Undo. Delete.
And now we get
Beginning.
the lovely smooth fade in. Now that cross dissolve does happen at the end as well. So if we press end,
End.
actually not that you'll notice it with this because there's a lot of silence. If we trim the end, so if we rewind with J, you'll hear all that audio. And we want to wind forward again because we've gone too far. And we can set our blade point. Let's put it there, why not? So if we hit blade,
Blade.
then we wind forward and we select.
Select clip.
With C, we delete
Delete.
with backspace. So if we want to make sure there's a fade at the end of that, we can go VO end.
00:00:00:00:00. AV clip.
And there doesn't appear to be a fade, which is fine, but we can add one in with cross dissolve. So if we select the clip, if we want to play the clip under the cursor, we can press slash.
Play selection.
And that is the whole clip. And if we want to verify that there is a fade at the end, we can press Command T.
Add cross dissolve.
And that will
End.
make sure if we press end and we go back, you can hear there's a fade there. Like that. So you want to select the clip and then put the fades on.
Beginning.
So then you get both the fade at the beginning
End.
and the fade at the end. Now, of course, there's stuff in the middle that we don't necessarily want in this project.
Beginning.
But how do we cut that out? Same way as we've done before, just with 2 blade points instead of 1. So if we fast forward to where we want it to be, and we're going to trim this out the way we did before.
Blade.
So blade, rewind, select,
clip.
delete.
Delete.
And that's now moved the beginning of the project up to here. To
Beginning.
there. And we can actually... So say we just want the shot where we actually get the, you know,
Blade.
the kill shot on these. So if we rewind,
Select,
delete. It's mostly just a matter of cutting out what you need to cut as you do. So,
Beginning. Undo. Delete.
so if we move that back slightly, there we
Blade.
go. So we got 1.
Beginning. Blade. Select. Delete.
There we go. You see, you can move rather rapidly through this and
Beginning.
it doesn't struggle at all. There's 1. And now we want to set a blade point about here, let's say. So if we set a blade point
Blade.
and then we go forward, scrolling through rapidly, and we want to find our next point, and we want to put our next blade point here,
Blade.
which is our end of our clip, and then you rewind and you select
Select clip.
and you delete.
Delete.
And now we have 2 clips. And then we can do the same again.
Blade.
Blade. And blade again.
Blade.
Select,
clip.
delete. And you go through this process for, you know, entire videos, just deleting things as you go through.
Blade.
And
Blade. Select. Delete.
there we go. We have our clips. Or most of our clips. I
Blade.
think we've got 1 or 2 more. But it doesn't all have to be from one video file. You can do it from multiple
Blade.
ones,
Select.
as I
Delete.
did with the Last of Us combat montage that I posted recently. Those 2 are actually quite close together. We can leave those like that. There we go. So we've now trimmed out. You've seen how to trim the beginning, the end, and, you know, from the middle of clips. But we want to make sure they all transition into each other smoothly. So you can transition
00.
each individual clip, but you can also select all with Command A
Select all.
and then Command T,
Add cross dissolve.
which will then transition all the clips into each other. So if we now play this as a
Beginning.
back-to-back sequence, We get automatic fades where they're present, and that creates that very rapid series of shots. And we
00,
can adjust
colon,
the
00,
fade
colon, 14.
duration. So say we want the duration of the final transition to be slightly longer.
00, colon, 00, colon, 14, colon, 49. Transition, colon, cross dissolve, layout item.
That transition is there under our playhead. So we press Control, Command, Option, Space,
Actions menu, 1 item.
and it will come up with this menu.
Show menu.
And we can press
Menu,
Show Menu.
Change duration, expand audio, change duration, ellipsis, control D.
Change duration, Control D. I've never actually got the
Show
change
menu,
duration
0.
shortcut to work effectively.
Expand audio, control F, change duration, ellipsis.
So that's why I use the manual method, as it were. So
Closing
we
menu.
hit that,
00, colon,
and
0.
now we can type a value in. So if we were to type, say, a value like 8, 10, 50, 30, those would be frame values. But if we type, say, 2 dot, and then hit enter, that would be a 2-second fade. So if we rewind, but if we change that again,
Actions show menu.
to say-
Expand audio, change duration, ellipsis, show menu. 0.
say 4 dot, hit enter. Oh. You notice there's a much longer fade, but if we want to undo both of those,
Undo trim duration.
but if we set it to,
Zero,
say, an 8-frame
Actions menu.
fade,
Show menu. Expand audio,
with
change
that
duration,
same
ellipsis, show
method, so
menu.
if we just
00,
put the
colon,
value of
00, colon,
8
14,
without
colon,
a
49.
dot
Transition, colon,
on,
cross dissolve, layout item.
and you'll notice there is not really a fade to speak of, it just kind of stops. But that's if you want really rapid cuts between things to say, silence a previous piece of audio. You can do that with intervening transitions as well. So say at the end of one transition, someone's talking, at the beginning of the next transition, they're talking and you don't want it to overlap. You could cut it quite suddenly so that, those two things don't sort of cross over each other. But let's undo that again,
Undo trim
because that
duration.
fade was all right where it was.
And
Like that. So
beginning.
we now have our fully edited clip, let's say, with all of this. But what we want to do is we now want to, say, put some music underneath it. So what we'll do is we'll create what's called a compound clip. So you can press Select All,
Select all.
Command A, and now we press Option and G.
Compound clip. Compound clip name. Name label. In event. Default event label. You are currently on a text field.
And the text field says
Final Cut Pro editing test clip.
that, which is not
Unselected.
the best
Insert
name.
F.
Let's call
F.
it.
Final Cut Pro
let's
editing test clip.
use standard
Selected.
sort of shift and arrows to select the text, and we delete.
Selection deleted.
Let's call it
O,
short
R, T, short.
shots.
O, T, S, shot. U, O, C.
uh,
O, P. O,
compound
D,
clip.
I, M, M, P. Project timeline layout.
And now, while that's
Closing
done,
dialog.
hitting enter on that, that combines all of the clips and the transitions into one single entity. So if you want to hook this into other projects, then you have one clip there to do so, rather than having to, connect transitions in other ways as well, that's been a confusing thing for me to learn. I remember trying to connect a clip and it said, you can't have transitions on connected clips. And I was like, well, how am I meant to do this then? And then I did a little research and found that if you use a compound clip, that does exactly what I wanted it to do.
Project
So we now
timeline layout
have
area.
in our
In project
timeline,
000 colon 00 colon 00 colon 00. AP clip colon short shots compound clip layout item.
we now just have one clip,
Beginning.
which has all the fades and everything in it. So if we wanted to put music to that, I will go and find a piece of music that we can put underneath it, and then I will show you how to paste this as a connected clip. So I will be back in a second once I've imported that media into the timeline. So we now have music in the timeline, and I've just used the music from my Twitch channel trailer that I wrote a while ago.
Play selection.
So I've got that in the timeline. But what if we want to put this clip over it? So we want to move these clips around because everything's in the wrong order at the moment. So what we want to do
Beginning.
is select our
Select clip.
compound clip. We cut with Command X.
Cut. 00 colon 00 colon 00 colon 00.
And now
Audio clip colon slow.
we have at the beginning of our timeline.
Play selection.
There we go. We have our music. So
Beginning.
if we want to hook this in, say we wanted to hook it in right on that bell there ish. There we go. So we want to hook it in right there so it fades in at the same time. We have our our compound clip on the clipboard and our music kicking in, we can now press Option V to
Paste as connected clip.
paste this connected clip. And now if we press home
Beginning.
and we play, we've now got a combat montage of sorts. There we go. So, let's pause that for a minute. You know, we could even make this into its own compound clip if we wanted to. We
Select
could,
all.
you know, Control A,
Compound
Option
clip.
G,
Compound clip name. Name label. Select all. A, E.
Final
E,
Edited
edit,
Combat.
T.
Just call it that
Project
for the sake
timeline.
of it.
Project timeline. In project 00 colon. Play selection.
And say we wanted to wind forward. And then put a fade like about here, let's say.
Blade.
There we go. Select,
Select delete.
rewind. And now we can put a cross dissolve at the end,
Add cross dissolve.
like that. And
00 colon 00
If there's
colon
one at the
00
beginning,
colon 00. Transition colon cross
we
dissolve
can
layout.
delete that.
Delete.
as we've
You are
shown
current
before. And then we can
00
change
colon.
the duration of this final
00
one
colon 00 colon 17 colon 54. Transition colon cross actions. Show menu.
with
menu.
the
Change,
same,
expand audio. Change the rate.
you know, stuff
Show
we've
menu.
done before, the same commands and things we've done before. So let's put that as a 5-second fade.
End.
There we go. So say that is hypothetically how we want it to end. I know, of course, this won't necessarily be visually accurate, but that's fine for this context.
Beginning.
Say we want to export this, we can now press Select All,
Select all.
just to make sure, and then we Command E
Export file. Dialog. Export file. 1920.
to export the file. Now, there have been some discussions around encoding and how big files end up being. I would need to find the article I used when I first started researching this, but I've managed to get it to a way that I'm happy with in terms of the file size.
Settings
So
tab.
in this dialog, you don't get to name anything yet,
Set roles tab. Info. Scroll. PE share window background image.
but it's lots of useful things like frame rates,
1920 x 1080. Video dimensions.
resolutions,
PE share info RTEC 59.94 f. Stereo. PE share info RTEC
whether it's
48 kilohertz.
stereo, sample rates,
00.mp4. Device 47.9 megabyte.
and that very useful thing of how many megs it is, just so you know. So if you want to press VO end, because VO left and right arrow, VO left or right arrow will scroll you through those.
Next. Default.
VO and end will scroll you to next. You click that with
In save
Control Option
dialog.
Space,
Save
and that
as.
gets you into
Where?
a Save As dialog,
Save as. Final Cut Pro Editing test.mp4.
which we can
Final
now
Cut Pro Edit.
call. Well, let's call it that for the sake of it. Final Cut Pro Editing Test.
Where? Documents.
And I'm
Where?
going to just save it in the default location,
Vertical splitter.
which might be different for you,
Vertical splitter.
depending on
Collapse.
how you set up your
On
file
left.
system.
Save button.
So let's do save. And unfortunately, I won't be able to show you the export dialog, or the background tasks dialog, but I'll show you that in a second once the file's done.
Project timeline layout area.
So it did load up QuickTime after I'd saved the file, and that's how I've set it up to do it. But what you would want to do, say you had a longer video that was multiple gigs in size, you could check the status of the running task. You would do that by pressing Command 9.
Background tasks. You are
And it
currently on
pops
a
up
group.
this view, where you would see various values underneath these headings.
Transcoding and analysis. Idle. Importing media. Idle. Media management. Idle. Rendering. Idle. Thumbnails and waveforms. Idle. Sharing. Idle. Backup. Idle. Validation. Idle.
And you would be looking under sharing,
Validate.
should you want to see where, how your file is doing. It would just give you a percentage, but that's usually good enough.
Now in.
But I hope all of this information has been useful. If I've omitted anything you would like to see clarification on, and if there's anything you'd like me to go into great detail on, I am very happy to do that. Please let me know, and I will see what I can do. But I hope this video has been useful and insightful in showing, even though it's complex and it's basically iMovie but bigger, it is definitely an accessible program and worth investing your time in if you're interested in doing stuff like this, even if you do need to get visual quality checks from sighted assistants occasionally. But with that being said, I've been Sightless Combat. Have a great rest of your day, whatever time it is in your part of the world, whatever time it is where you are. Stay safe, take care, and I look forward to seeing you all on the next video. Thank you very much for watching.